Hello, our podcast listeners. I want to thank you guys for downloading episode 6 of the Mish podcast. We are going on 3 weeks in a row of releasing episodes, which I'm pretty proud of ourselves, if I must say so myself. In this episode, which is quite a long one, it's about an hour and 45 minutes. So this one may not be for everybody, but in this one, we talk about building our 4x4 Sprinter van. All the way from the beginning, how we purchased it, how we found it, the materials we used, how much we paid for everything. We go into quite a lot of detail and gives you some ideas of sort of the ideology behind our build and why we made the decisions that we did. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, this might be the episode for you. So without further ado, here is episode 6. Welcome to episode 6 of the Mish podcast. Welcome, listeners. Thank you for downloading our podcast or streaming from whatever platform you're on. We really appreciate it. My name is Dan. I guess we need to have some kind of formal introduction.
We should have some music or something.
Oh, there's been music.
Oh.
For the last 2 episodes, I've put music at the beginning.
Sorry, Dan, I haven't listened to our podcast.
Yeah, I know. You don't have to tell me. I just assumed. But we can try to do just a real brief intro for those of them that are new.
Okay.
So if you're new, I think we'll have an episode actually that talks about our background. Do we? Well, my name is Dan, and my co-host over here is my lovely wife and travel companion.
Hi, I'm Marlene.
Is that who you want to be referred to as?
I guess.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I can give you different names, but I don't know if it's appropriate.
All right, let's keep it PC.
All right, we'll keep it at the kid-friendly rating that we've got our podcast at on iTunes. So last week, this is actually our 3rd week in a row that we've put out an episode.
Wow, look at us.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Huh? I mean, we're not doing much. We're still in not St. Peter. We're still in Split. We're still in Croatia. We've run into, here's the thing. We love going to new places. And every time you go to a new place and you find, the first things you find are the amazing things about the place.
The food.
The food, the scenery.
Yeah.
What's different about the new place versus the places you've been, the places you're used to. But the longer you stay at a place, the more problems you find. You start digging a little deeper. You start sort of scratching the underbellies of a place, and you're there for a reason. Like, we're here for a reason. We're here to, get our residency paperwork ready so we can travel more freely in the EU. But, man, the bureaucracy in Croatia is just ridiculous. And it's not just, like, we didn't initially experience it, but we heard it from our friends that live here. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, we turn our paperwork in, and it's like, they said it's going to be a month. Should be fine. And it's like every time we go in there, they tell us something new that they didn't tell us before. I mean, we should have known, because the second time we went to the police office to turn in our paperwork, they asked us for something new. And we're like, well, you didn't ask that before. That's fine. But then every time we've gone in after that, they've asked for something else new.
It was a surprise. Now we expect...
Now we expect something. Every time we go in there now, it's like, okay, what are they going to tell us this time that's new that we didn't know before?
Right.
So we're still here. We're still not, it's a little bit discouraging to go through this process. And you talk to everybody, like even our Uber drivers. When we're driving around, we're going to, the mall to go shopping or for whatever, start chit-chatting with the taxi driver. And he's talking about, oh, yeah, no, that happens to me too. It takes weeks, takes years, months sometimes to do stuff.
Yeah. Nobody understands why we have to do this, but we have to do it.
Yeah. It's discouraging. You see stuff on the news. We talked to a friend. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a Chinese restaurant at the food court in the mall. it's real Chinese people there, and you don't see them. Like, what's their deal? What's their story? You know, and our friend is like, well, when I was living in Zagreb, there was a Japanese lady who came here and opened a store, and then the TV station interviewed her, and they're like, tell us about your experience here. And she's like, on national TV, oh, Croatia's a great place to visit, but don't come here if you want to start a business. I was like, serious? And then they aired it on TV.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it's bureaucracy that you go through in every country, just some worse than others. We're dealing with it right now. And hopefully, we say this all the time, that we're seeing the end of it, but we'll see. Right? So now we're committed to staying here probably through Christmas and New Year's. It's far enough along. Today's the 15th. We're only a week and a half from Christmas.
Yeah. So it makes sense to stay and wait for, hopefully, next week your situation is solved. And then in 2 weeks, the kids and my situation is settled. And then we're done.
Well, Marlene and the kids didn't really have a situation before until last week. And last week, they're like, well, you guys, you have your passport, but you should get your ID cards.
Right.
Okay, ID cards. What do we need with ID cards? Anyways, we're waiting for their ID cards too now. So, anyways, that's not what this episode is about. We have an episode that talks about our first 2 months in Croatia. I believe that was episode 3, right?
4.
Episode
3 was
3.
shipping with Jason and Angela.
Okay, yeah. Episode 4, December 1st was our first 2 months in Croatia. So if you want to hear us complaining, actually, it's not just complaining. Episode 4, we talk more about just, you know, our experience coming to a new place. So a lot of fun stuff, too. So today, episode 6, we're going to talk about what we were supposed to do last week. Last week, we were going to talk about our van build, but it ended up episode 5 was just about why we switched to a Sprinter van. We didn't have enough time to go into the actual build itself, but today, in this episode, we're going to go into all the little details about our build, the specific model of Sprinter that we chose, and what it came with, how much we paid for everything, and why we chose each component, on and on and on. So that's going to be all about that. So if you're interested in building your own Sprinter van, you may not want to build it just like ours. Chances are, I'm guessing most people aren't going to build their van like ours.
Let me mute my computer, sorry.
Most people aren't going to build their van like ours unless you're a family of 5 and, you know, you guys don't mind sleeping in a tiny little van. Then ours might be a good way for you to use as a baseline. But ours is very specific. So, we'll talk all about it. And there'll be a video that'll give you guys the tour on our YouTube channel, probably sometime in January.
Yeah.
Because we're here in Split, and the van is in the village on the island of Hvar, so we don't actually have our van next to us because here in Split, we don't really have a place to park it. So we took it to Marlene's dad's village where he's from, and there's more space there. So we can't really shoot a video of it now, but we will put one up on our YouTube channel soon. But let's go all the way back to when we purchased the van. We looked at a bunch of different vans, and ultimately we decided on the Sprinter 4x4 as a 2017, which are exactly like the 2018s. The 2017-18 is kind of like a blend year model because the 18 is the last year they made this style. 2019, which are the ones that are being made now, it's a brand new design. It's more modern. It's more like a Mercedes, less utilitarian, which I think some people will like. You know, it's going to have a lot more of the fancy electronics. I mean, the one that we have does too, but definitely more like a cargo van than it does like a luxury car.
Right.
But the 19 is more like a luxury vehicle, which isn't what we want. So we're actually happy that we didn't get a new one.
We're actually concerned about how much electronics is actually in our model.
Oh yeah,
so
I mean,
even adding another layer of electronics is we didn't want that.
No, we don't want that. You know, I mean, as it is, everything's fly-by-wire, except for the steering. Obviously, steering is mechanical. But gas pedal, brake pedal, shifter, and all that stuff is fly-by-wire. So things can break, but they're made in Europe. Well, they're assembled in the U.S., but the components are built in Europe. So lots of them around here, so it wouldn't be hard to get it serviced here in Europe if we needed to. And that's one of the reasons why we got it. But we found our 2017 brand new on the lot about 5 minutes from Marlene's parents' house where we were spending last Christmas. And pure luck. For those of you that know about Sprinter vans, the four-wheel drive versions are really hard to find. Most people special order them. So we went online and looked on their website and did their little online van builder thing.
Yeah. Build your dream van.
We pretty much built this exact same van. It is like I said, a high roof 2017 170 wheelbase. They call this a crew van, which has a factory second row of seats. So it seats 5 people from the factory. So that means it's all crash tested, safe, and all that. So it's not like an aftermarket seat or anything, which is why we wanted this. And the 170 makes it longer so that we can have that second row of seats and then plenty of space behind us.
It's not the longest. It's like the middle length.
Yeah, so they make a 170 extended, which is 1.5 feet longer, but same wheelbase. Mm-hmm. So it would just have a longer overhang in the back, and we didn't want that. We want to, as it is, we feel like our van is really long, and we didn't need that super extended version.
And that's one of the reasons why we didn't get the Ford, because the departure angle on the Ford, on the body size that we wanted, the length was crazy. We would have been scraping all over the place.
Right, because the Ford Transit doesn't have multiple wheelbases. They have the same wheelbase, and their extended one, they don't have 3 sizes, they just have 2 sizes. Now, there's standard, Transit, and then they have the extended, which same wheelbase, just pushed back, similar to how the 170 extended is pushed back. The Mercedes has 3 different sizes, but the Ford has 3 different roof heights. Mm-hmm. So what the equivalent one that we would have gotten would have been the Ford Transit extended high roof crew.
Aftermarket 4x4.
Then we have to get an aftermarket 4x4, which are nice. I think, Quigley converts them, Quad Van converts them. Many places convert them, but it takes time once again. We were lucky that we went to the dealership, and we bought ours in Torrance, California, and somebody had placed an order for one, and it turned out to be the exact same one that we had just built the night before.
Same color.
Exactly the same color. There may have been 1 or 2 things that I may not have sprung for if I was really building one, but it doesn't have crazy fancy stuff, but it has some of the safety stuff, like the wind assist for really counter steering when you're driving in really windy conditions. There's some other safety features that are nice to have. So it was hard for us to say no, because not only are 4x4 vans hard to find, they also don't give you a discount when you buy them. Versus the standard 2-wheel drive Sprinters, they got to compete against all these other vans like the Ram ProMaster or the Ford Transit. So they're willing to give you a pretty significant discount off of the sticker when you buy one. So we paid the van itself was $60,000.
I think they gave us $1,000 off.
Yeah, which when we told somebody by that, they're like, "Wow, that's pretty good."
We're like, really?
Yeah, because we had gone to this dealership probably like 5 or 6 times just to look at it again.
Get free coffee.
Yeah, that's why we figured out. If you're you're not gonna get a discount from Mercedes when you buy a 4x4 spinner van, but go to the dealership and get free donuts and coffee, and that'll probably help offset a little bit. So we bought that, and then we kind of gave ourselves like roughly 30 days to build it out, which is really ambitious.
For somebody, we've never built anything out. We've bought everything before.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, when we talked about our last episode 5, we talked about all the other times we had before, we didn't have the time. We didn't want to waste time building, but this time we had time to build. By having time, I mean we have a couple months.
Yeah, most people wouldn't call that time. Well, that's why we didn't want to order anything also custom and wait for it.
Yeah,
like we have a little bit of time, but not like what normal people would consider. Like
no.
It's a lot of time for us to stop for 2 months.
Mm-hmm. And we had other projects to do.
Right.
So fortunately, we were able to sell our truck, four-wheel camper, and casita pretty quickly. And all of that money went straight into the van. So everything else that we did to the van came out of our pocket. And we have a pretty extensive items, like a price list and itemized things that we bought. And it's at mollymish.com/vanbuild, one word. You can go check it out. And we're going to use that as kind of a reference, too, for this podcast on things that we bought, how we built it. So let's just go back to the build. We didn't have a place to build it, really. We don't have a workshop. But we're at Marlene's parents' house in L.A. And they have a really slanted driveway, so we couldn't park there. And they have a regular 2-car garage, so we can't park inside. Mm-mm. So we ended up building it on the sidewalk next to the curb, which is okay. It wasn't level, so that was a challenge. So we couldn't use the level-to-level things. We have to use tape measures to make sure things are level.
And every time we drove off to test the van, we're like, is this cabinet really level? Do we build it to like the crooked street?
If you really look close, they're supposed to be symmetrical, but if you really look close, there's a half-inch off here and there from left to right. But nothing that's noticeable.
Pretty good for first-timers.
Pretty good for not building on a flat surface using just kind of a couple of power tools. So let's go through the tools that we used.
Okay.
We had, your usual hand tools, saws, screwdrivers, chisels and whatever. What we were able to use were some of your dad's power tools, which came in handy, but primarily we use two things. We use an 18-volt screwdriver gun. Actually, we had two. We had your dad's and we had mine. They're Milwaukee drills, cordless drills. And then we use your dad's jigsaw for the most part. And then the circular saw came in for some longer cuts that needed to be straighter and, thicker wood. But other than that, we didn't really use anything else.
Always a saw that we cut the van for the windows.
We had a grinder, angle grinder. So we used an angle grinder.
Yeah, we didn't have any like special woodworking.
We didn't have a table saw. We didn't have, we had some. Your dad has some clamps that we used to clamp some stuff together when things needed to be glued. Your neighbors or your parents' neighbors down the road saw us working. He came by. There were several neighbors that came by almost every day because we're out there working and people always came by and wanted to chit chat. And there's this guy that's always like jogging, and he just goes up and down the road. He doesn't go in a circle. So towards the end, people were like, "Well, this thing's really coming on." It became like a regular.
I met more of my parents' neighbors while we were building the van than I did my entire life of living there. In just like a 2-month period. Than my entire 17 years I lived in San Pedro in LA.
Yeah, but some of those people didn't live there when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Some of them were though.
Maybe they were that older guy.
Yeah, that older guy that jogged.
Yeah.
And also that old couple that always comes by.
The French couple.
Her.
Yeah.
So they were, one of the neighbors saw us cutting stuff on the sidewalk. They're like, let me bring some sawhorses. So that came in really handy. We ended up with a couple of sawhorses that we got to borrow. We gave it back. So a couple things that we bought for this build that we use extensively. One of them is pocket hole jig. Because we ended up doing a lot of pocket holes. Our entire setup was built using mostly 3/4-inch ply. We didn't use any. Well, we probably have some. I won't say we use no 2x4s. There are some 2x4s in there, but there's basically when people build vans with wood, there's a couple different styles that people do. They'll either use they'll do like a stick frame, like you would build a house. using either 2x3s or 2x2s or 2x4s, and you build like a stick frame, and then you skin it with kind of thinner plywood. But what we chose to do is we chose to use 3/4 inch ply as the skin and the structural support. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of the construction methods that we use. So we use a pocket hole jig to do a lot of the stuff. And then obviously we had to get fasteners, and everything was screwed in. Well, actually, I'll say most things are screwed in. There's a few nails in there, like some of the exposed raw wood edges. I put like a little aluminum angled little
bracket
plates to kind of protect it from wear. And those are kind of used. Those are nailed in. But other than that, everything else is screwed together, so it's pretty strong. And everything was bought from Home Depot, some Lowe's. We used primarily 3/4 inch birch and 3/4 inch red oak.
Yeah.
And we use birch. We try to use birch for everything that you can see, right? And then we use red oak. Primarily, we bought red oak because the local Home Depot in San Pedro, where your parents live,
seemed like it was all another Home Depot. It seems like everybody was kind of out, so we switched to red oak, which ended up being a good thing for the kids' bunk because we needed a stronger wood.
Right, red oak is stiffer than birch, because we were going to stain it. Well, we didn't stain it. We used polyacrylic. Yeah, we used a polyacrylic finish, so give you more like just a raw.
I like the cut. I like the
normal color and grain.
Right.
It just gave you some protection. So we wanted all the outward facing surfaces to match. So they were all birch, but even then, it's like some ply of the birch is darker than others, and some stuff when you sand it, it gets a different pattern.
I wasn't 100% happy with how consistent it was, but
it's plywood, there's not much you can do because plywood is a bunch of thin plies glued together.
Right.
And then when you start sanding, you could sand through some of the stuff and exposing lighter and darker wood.
I could have bought, way more expensive wood. I don't even know where to go to like a fancy lumber store.
Well, you can go to like a mom and pop lumber yard, and people buy like marine grade ply, which I think is overkill for this. But you do get better quality. So we spent a lot of time at Home Depot just kind of flipping through the plywood pile just to kind of find stuff that we thought would be good. So on our list, I don't know if I have a tally of all the Home Depot stuff, but you can go to mullimies.com/vanbill and look at all of our Home Depot bills. It came out to be quite a bit of lumber that we bought. And for the installation, so we opted to also keep the factory headliner that came in the van instead of a lot of people will they'll put in furring strips on the walls and the ceiling of their van, and then they will put in like wood siding almost, or like cedar planks or some kind of wood strips to kind of line the entire inside. We didn't want to do that. We weren't necessarily going for a rustic look, which a lot of people are, and I think rustic looks are, in my opinion anyways, it's one of two things. It's either you're really good and you're going for that look and it turns out looking really cool, or like you're like us, you're not that good at woodworking and things turn out rustic anyways because that's how it turns out. So then you can just say, I was going for this look.
But we also didn't want the extra weight up on top, the extra cost, and the time we would have wasted scrapping the headliner for a more custom look.
Yeah. So it's more time and more money and more weight. Personally, I didn't want that extra weight. There's a lot of weight that people put on the top when they lined the entire roof with wood. And, you have to stain all that stuff too. So whatever stain you use, there may be VOCs in that material. I don't know. We try to use very low VOC stuff. I think some of the contact adhesive, we try to get the lowest VOC stuff that we can get to glue things together. But, at the end of the day, I think, the factory headliner worked out really well for us. So what we used underneath that and all the wall panels was just rigid foam. We bought big 4 foot by 8 foot pieces of rigid foam, and we cut them into shape, and we glued them against the metal walls and the metal ceiling, and then we put aluminum tape over all the seams, and then we put Reflectix over that, and then we put all the wall panels back up.
And somebody warned us that the rigid foam would be so squeaky when we drive down the road, we'd hear it, but there hasn't been
nothing.
Not one squeak. Even when the kids are quiet, no squeaks.
No, it doesn't squeak. I don't know who's building their van where their foam squeaks. Maybe they're too looser in the spaces, but
and some people splurge for thin-solid material because of that squeaking possibility, and it's easier to install. But we didn't want to spend that much money on it, and we have no problems right now.
We have no problems. Insulation, as far as insulation goes, there's a bunch of different materials you can use for insulation. But what you want for a small space that goes down the road like this, there's 2 main criteria. One is you want it to be non-toxic. You want it to be. You don't want fiberglass batten insulation like you do in houses. Because in houses, it doesn't move, it doesn't chafe. You don't get fine dust of it coming out the seams once you put glue or caulking and drywall and all that stuff over. But in a van, you don't want to use like fiberglass batten insulation. You want to use like non-toxic stuff and foam, rigid insulation. We use what types of foam? There's 2 different types that we use.
Something it's in here, especially with like little kids. There's EPS foam and poly. Poly foam insulation, poly something.
Yeah, so we use EPS foam, and then we used for EPS foam is fine and it's pretty cheap. But the thing about EPS foam is it's kind of hard to cut. If you guys ever use EPS foam is that stuff that you get when you buy like a kitchen appliance, right? It comes padded. Polyiso is the other kind. So EPS foam. It squeaks when you cut it, like it doesn't cut even. Really, what you want to do to cut EPS foam, you want to use like a cutting wire that's like electrified, so it heats up and then it kind of melts the foam as it cuts. But we didn't have that, and we didn't want to necessarily buy one or build one.
And looking at forums, there were so many opinions about insulation. Like more than any other, like I think Sprinter topic, there were so many opinions and people fighting online, and it was just you have to just figure out what's the best for you. Even though we never did it before, we just
figure out your budget, figure out your timeline, and figure out what kind of skills you have.
And people said, "Don't use Reflectix; it's a waste of time." And we're sitting in like 100-degree LA weather, and as soon as we put a layer of Reflectix. Man, it made the hugest difference. Like, I thought we were going to die in that van before that layer of Reflectix went over the foam.
Yeah, and it's Reflectix is great for your windows and stuff too, and you're always going to have windows. So put them in the windows to kind of, keep the light out, keep the windows insulated. So we have a lot of Reflectix in there too. I mean, it's not expensive, so it doesn't hurt. And the thing you got to kind of look out for over time is whatever material you use, you want to make sure it doesn't degrade and pulverize when it chafes, because you could end up with just like powder over time, at least in certain areas anyways. So with our timeline, with our budget, we went with mostly EPS foam. Some 1/2 inch, I think. We have some 3/4 inch maybe in some places, but 1/2 inch lets us kind of double up if we need to. So polyiso is on the other type that we used. It's much easier to cut. The downside of polyiso is that it doesn't bend, it doesn't flex. Mm-hmm. It's very, very rigid. So to kind of make it form a curve like your van would have a lot of curves, you have to cut them into smaller pieces and put them together. So those are your choices if you want to go kind of the budget route that, like we did. like Marlene said, this material by 3M called Thinsulate. Thinsulate is a real popular one. And in fact, there are people that can sell you like a complete Thinsulate insulation kit that's made for a specific van. You can say, I have a Sprinter 170 cargo, and they'll say, okay, here's the Thinsulate kit, all pre-cut sections and all that stuff. You just buy it and stick it in. Thinsulate is non-toxic, but it's expensive. Like I said, I think it would have cost close to $1,000 for the material itself. And it doesn't necessarily have that great of R value. So in order for you to get really good insulation, you're going to want to probably double up, and that gets really expensive. So that's why we didn't do it. We also used some spray foam.
Yeah, it was really scary. We regret it.
I don't regret it because it turned out to not have really any we didn't have any problems with the spray foam until we started reading stuff online and watching videos about other people using spray foam. And we're like, oh no, this is going to expand, it's going to crack, and it's going to deform our panels. But I don't think we were anywhere near deforming our panels. It seemed like, things were deforming.
There's some crazy horror stories and pictures online of people who sprayed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, we weren't spraying the whole thing, but people spray the whole thing and then go to an extreme temperature change, and their like walls crinkle in, and, like pull in, and it just like the whole thing looks like got hail damage. And
that's specifically for people that like pay for a spray foam company to come and like spray their whole interior. Right. So those pieces that spray foam, it adheres to the skin on the inside of the skin. So as the temperature increases, it expands, and then when it decreases, it contracts. So you can imagine what that does to sheet metal. And if you guys don't know, Mercedes sheet metal on these Sprinter vans is thinner than your usual sheet metal in like an American truck, like we're used to. We had an F-250 before, and that's pretty heavy gauge sheet metal that they use. But the Sprinter vans, you can tell, just by feeling it, it's thinner. So when it expands and contracts, when you do spray and insulation, it's problematic.
We're just working on ourselves. There's a dent on each side of our Sprinter that we don't like to look at, but there's a little crinkle here, and then when you put your ladder against it once to do some work up on top,
on the passenger side.
Yeah, and then just a weird pressure point. That's it.
You just have to get over it. I mean, it's going to happen. If you look at any Sprinter of a certain age after a certain amount of time, look close. So there's going to be little crinkles here and there. They're just the way.
It's just not fun when you pay $60,000 for your most expensive car you ever owned, and then you're like, oh, shoot.
Well, that's not even the worst thing you do to a brand new van during our build process. So obviously the next thing that we do is we had to cut holes into our van. Mm-hmm. So we ended up cutting 4 holes, and 4 big ones anyways. We bought 2 windows from what's the name of the company?
Arctic Turn? Or is that the type of window? Turn Overland. Yeah, Turn Overland out of Prescott, Arizona. They make these sort of it's like European style windows.
Yeah, they call it the Euro something windows. They pop out instead of slide, and they can kind of lock in like a little, half-inch gap position. So that's really cool for us. We want to be able to crack our windows and then have it be secured so people can't open it bigger.
And that was important for us, especially when we had our cat still, to have a way to leave our windows open and have circulation in there for her. Yeah.
Well, so that was one way for us to get 2 openings to get air to flow. And then we also got these wind deflectors that go in the front driver and passenger side windows, so we can crack those too. So we had to cut 2 holes for those 2 windows in the back, and then we had to cut 2 more holes for the fantastic fans that we got.
Right.
One over the kids' seats and one over
kids' bed.
The bed. And those are 14-inch holes. And, again, those had to be cut with an angle grinder. which was scary. Sparks flying everywhere. Brand new van. We just bought it like a week ago. We start cutting it. We never cut.
Never cut metal before like that.
I did a couple of practice cuts,
Yeah. And my dad was there looking at us. I'm like, Dad, you want to do this for us? He's like, no way.
No,
I'm here to watch.
Yeah. It turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the way it turned out.
It was really scary.
Yeah, it was scary. So we got those installed. And from there, we had to do some preliminary wiring. So what we did when we installed the headliner back in, once we put the installation in, is we have these overhead lights that came with the van that they're basically lights that are connected to the switch of like the overhead, the light overhead above the second row crew seats. So there's, I think, 3 or 4 lights total. And when you flip a switch, they all turn on the inside. And I kind of rewired them so that the ones behind the crew seats are now wired individually. So when you turn the switch, it doesn't power those on anymore. And it's also not connected to the car starting battery. And the idea for that was to take those lights that go into the headliner, so it has a factory finish, connect that to the house battery, which we were going to install during the build. So that way we can leave the lights on, and if it somehow kills the battery, we can still start the van. So that was the choice we made, and we, instead of keeping I think they were just regular incandescent, or maybe they were halogen light bulbs that were in there before. We swapped those out for LEDs to make it more efficient. They could be brighter. I think they're bright enough. Once you're in there, you kind of get used to it, but I think they could be brighter. We could use maybe more lights in there, but it could always be brighter, I guess. But at the same time, I think I wouldn't want them to be really bright all the time. So I would prefer to have this if we weren't going to have any dimmers. So I think we're happy with this choice. So I rewired that and ran the wire down, and I wired up the 2 fantastic fans, and then ran the wire to the side on the driver's side wall, and then have that come down. And we did all that before we put the walls in. So in the walls, we had the lower panels.
Yeah, it came with the cargo van.
Reused the lower panels.
Bottom half.
Right. They're just corrugated plastic sheets. And we reuse them. There's no reason not to. It's all covered up anyways.
I was looking for a matching set. Somebody was checking. I just couldn't find any to have a match because it was easy.
For the upper panels.
Yeah, it was wipeable, and it would be the same color and be easy. But I had a hard time looking for that.
Right. So then we had to get, I think we got 1/4-inch ply, birch ply, and then to kind of cut our own upper panels so we can have something that covers up the insulation for the upper panels on both sides. And we just took like a swatch sample to Home Depot and had them match the paint. Turned out okay.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but
no, we
it's
painted
close.
it. Because we wanted the whole interior, the walls and the ceiling to be kind of consistent gray.
Just the factory gray headliner color.
So we wanted a factory gray of all the walls, and then everything else that we built furniture-wise was going to be natural birch color.
Yeah.
So that was our look we were going for.
Yeah, and I'll put a picture of what it looks like if you don't know what it looks like on our mollymish.com/podcast site. This episode 6 post, you'll see some pictures there. So we got that, and then once we got all that done, we were essentially ready to start building the interior. And
we left the floor as is. It came with like a...
It's like a composite floor with like a rubber like
mat
over the top.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty nice. Like the composite flooring, it would be a shame to tear that out and get rid of it, because what would you do? You take that out and then you cut another piece of wood that's the same thing and put it back on?
People insulate underneath that wood. But what we chose is to leave that as is, and then we insulated wherever we built. So under the kitchen counter, under the refrigerator section, and under our bedding is all an extra layer of insulation.
Right. So that's the only place where we use like 2x3 timber for dimensional lumber for framing.
Yeah.
So the idea of what we did is instead of building a whole new floor on top of that, I just built a frame and built like a floor as the footprint of everything that was going to have furnitures on top of it. So it was going to be the entire bed section in the back, and then on the driver's side it goes all the way up just to the back of the crew seats, and that was going to be our kitchen counter. And then on the passenger side it goes up, forms like a U shape, but with one side being a little shorter, so I guess like kind of like a J shape, backwards J. And on the passenger side goes up just before the sliding door opening, and that was going to be like the platform for the fridge. So we built that kind of floor shape out, and then we insulated all the spaces under that. And then
it was a last minute decision. We weren't going to do it, but then we're like, I wonder if we're going to regret it, and then it'd be so impossible to add it because everything that we're building is on top of this space. So let's just do it.
There was a lot of head scratching during the beginning of this build, like just standing around watching. What should we do?
Maybe for the whole build down.
Maybe for the whole build. But I mean, it was literally trying to decide, because if we make the wrong choice, we can't go back. So we had to really commit when we decided to do something. So we did, and deciding to do this was kind of tough too, because our plan was to have bunk beds, our bed down below and the kids' bed up on top, and to have storage underneath our bed. So that means that we had to account for every inch of vertical space, because whatever we took away from storage, then it would go to like our sleeping area, and whatever we had to decide how tall to make the storage area, because we were going to try to figure out what's the tallest thing that we're going to need to slide under our bed. We got to make sure it's at least that tall. So there are some things that we already had that was a certain height, and then also we had to go and decide, okay, if we're going to use storage bins to slide under, like what bins do we use and how tall are they? I don't want to buy bins and then have them not fit, or buy bins after we build it and not find the perfect ones and waste vertical space to not be able to put stuff in there. So there were some trips made, went to Home Depot, like measuring heights of bins that we may want to buy. And once we decided what the height was, I want to say it was 18 inches maybe.
Maybe.
And then we had to decide how, account for the 3/4 inch ply, account for all the different materials in between, account for the foam mattress, how thick that is, and then divide that evenly between the top of our bed and the top of the kids' bed, so how much headroom we have.
Yeah, we want to make it equal.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that everybody's comfortable sleeping there, and they don't feel claustrophobic, which is great. Turned out great. I wouldn't say, like, if you're in there for the first time, you may look at it and be like, "Ooh, that's low," but when you're laying there, it's actually not that low. It feels actually cozy. Mm-hmm. What's nice is that we're sleeping with our head in the back, and then we have big windows on the back doors that are tinted, even though we cover them when it's cold, but you can actually take the reflectix off and then you can see right outside, which, opens up a little more. And what's nice too, like during the day, if we want them to just be open, you can lay in bed and have the back totally open and the side open and have a nice breeze come through.
Right. We never owned a vehicle where we can open up and just have our heads looking like at a beach or looking at the waves.
It almost feels like you're sleeping outside when you have the doors open like that.
Yeah,
so
it's nice.
That turned out nice. So we had to make all those decisions. And then what we decided from once we built the floor is we bought some more EPS foam. We taped them in with aluminum tape, and we put a piece of plywood over. I think it was 3/4 inch ply again over the top of that. Mm-hmm. And then we built everything above that.
We put linoleum down.
Right, because we use MDF. No, we didn't use MDF. We used, what's this? We didn't use plywood. We used that. Basically, it's not like a finished surface.
Yeah.
So we had to put something else down to kind of protect it from the raw wood.
And when we're sliding bins in and out, it's nice to have a nice surface and it's wipeable.
Yeah.
Also, instead of getting wood dirty.
Yeah, that turned out
splinters.
really good too. You know, because when we pulled the bins out, Luca likes to crawl in there, and I wouldn't want him in there if there was like chances of splinters.
Right.
So from that, we built up. From there, we built it. We built like cabinets on both sides, and these cabinets are built using 3/4 inch.
And those cabinets are only in our bed section. It's not in the kids section.
Right. They become the supports for the upper bunk.
Right.
So I don't know how much space it took from either side. It probably takes like 6 to 8 inches on either side.
Yeah.
So on the kids' bunk, on the kids' bed, they actually have like a foot to a foot and a half bigger bed than us.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes up on the side, and then there's like a notch cut out in the design to accommodate for those windows that are in there. So that was kind of tricky. There was a lot of standing around, figuring out what to do also.
I think we spent a whole day once just staring, like trying to figure out.
We spent that whole day staring and then going to Home Depot and coming back staring some more.
That was a hard day.
It was just it felt very not productive, but it was necessary. In the end, it was productive because we needed to think it through. You know, and also when you build like this, you're using like ply, 3/4 inch ply as your structural support. You have to make sure that how you cut your pieces of wood, like, you know, the wood has to like sit on top of the other of the vertical pieces, not get butted against the side, because you won't have any structural strength that way. So the way that we built everything is, it has to be vertical pieces of ply sitting on top of, you know, well-supported structures underneath.
I just remember every day I wrote, day 1 we did this, day 2 we did this, and every day. And it's like, day 15, a lot of staring.
Yeah, we didn't do anything.
It's a work day, but it still needs to be recorded because we wasted probably one of our long days like staring and trying to just use our whatever skills we had to make it work.
Yeah, so I felt really accomplished after we finished that part, because once we have the bed. So basically what happens, once we had that bed ready, we ended up finding these trifold mattresses from Amazon, made by a company called Cozy, and I think it's just some generic. It was meant for probably like stash it in your closet if you have friends come visit, like pull that out and you can have them sleep on the floor kind of thing.
It's like Cozy with like a million Z's.
Yeah, in an eye. But they turned out to be perfect size mattresses.
And that's a funny thing with this van build. Every time we had to like make some kind of decisions, like, and then we buy something, it's like, it's the perfect size.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Well, not only is it the perfect size for our bed below, because remember it's about a foot narrower than the bed on top. They happen to sell 2 different sizes. And the smaller size fits our bed below perfectly, and then the bigger size fits the top bunk perfectly.
Yeah. It's like we planned it, but we totally didn't.
Well, because we thought, okay, we're making these custom-sized beds, so we're probably going to have to buy a custom mattress, you know, but we didn't have to. We ended up finding
and it was going to be so expensive. I was reaching out to a few companies, see if they wanted to work with us, and no, you know, it was just like, this is going to be so expensive. What are we going to do?
Yeah, custom foam's expensive.
And then Amazon just had perfect size. It's crazy.
I wanted like nice foam too. Like, I would say these worked out really well, but they're not like premium, super fancy dual density foam, right?
No.
It's just single density. Like, you're definitely like, you can, if you like dig your elbow into the foam, you can feel it kind of bottoming out. But if you're just laying on there sleeping, it's perfectly fine. But we also didn't have the luxury of having super thick mattress, just because we're sort of short on vertical space.
Yeah, we're scared to add mattress topper to that foam that we have now.
Yeah, because we think,
space.
Our face is going to be closer to the top of the bed. So, yeah, we didn't want that. And then just for sort of horizontal support for the upper bunk, we use 3/4 inch red oak for the bed, for the kids' bed on top. which I think is fine. For most people, 3 kids on top, they weigh, 3 of them combined probably weigh about what I weigh. It's going to be fine. It's supported fine, but I just wanted to make sure that I could sort of support it better. So we use some solid wood, 3/4 inch solid red oak as horizontal support in 3 sections. And then even beyond that, I was able to find this 3/4 inch steel square tubing that supported the front towards the driver or towards the front of the vehicle. There's one horizontal square tubing supporting the very front edge, and there's a horizontal support supporting sort of the middle. Because I know that the kids will be kind of sitting at the edge or hanging out at the edge when we're like cooking or whatever, and that just needed to be supported a little bit better. So it's supported really well, and it doesn't take up a ton of space, which is great. Because last thing I wanted to do is to have like giant pieces of 2x6s supporting the thing horizontally.
And the nice thing we also did, which we haven't taken advantage of, is that top bunk we built in 2 pieces. So we can take the front or the back half of the kid's bed and put it on top of each other, fold up our tri-fold mattresses, and then we have a bigger opening living area when we need it. We can't drive like that, but when we're hanging out, for a day or two somewhere, then it's nice.
The way that the top is set up is initially they were just kind of sitting like gravity, kind of holds it in place. But when you're driving, it's important for those everything that you build in the back to be fastened to the vehicle. So we actually have 4 places in that the entire structure that we built in the back, everything from all parts of the bed, the cabinets, the kitchen counter, the countertop, the refrigerator section, the refrigerator box, all of that is completely bolted together or screwed together. It's essentially one piece. And that entire piece sits on that footprint that we built on the floor. And then in 4 places, 2 on each side, I used riv nuts against the interior wall of the van and big bolts, 4 big bolts bolt them to the van. So if we hit like a big bump, you won't, the entire structure won't move. And also the bed platform, we can unscrew and take it off, and it's using T-nuts underneath. So you can just undo it from the top, and then that top board can come off. That's bolted in 4 places. So we can undo 4 bolts, slide it back. But we haven't really used it that way like we were planning.
Right. And it's for safety in case we get in an accident. That whole bed's not going to come flying at us. Everything's secured to the walls, to the metal
it's like
walls.
A big 6-foot by 4-foot piece of 3/4 inch red oak. If it comes flying at you, if you get, if you rear end somebody, that thing can just come flying forward and like cut your head off.
Right.
So it was important to have that bolted down, but it was important for us to make it easy to remove when we want to kind of set up, for just like a hangout space. So what we did after that, that was about 20 days worth of building. And then once we got to that part complete, I put the batteries in. I did some quick wiring so we can have wires for the fans and the lights. And I wired up. We used 2 AGM batteries. We actually I had contemplated using lithium batteries, but the prices have come down a bit, but it's still about twice what you would pay for comparable AGM batteries. So there's a blog post on mollymish.com/blog about how we built our electrical system. You can go and check that out and look at all the components we use for that. So essentially I bought 2 6-volt sealed AGM batteries, and I had running them in series. So I have just essentially 1 big 12-volt batteries. It's 225 amp hours. So because they're AGM traditional chemistry batteries, only about 50% of those amp hours are usable. So we have about a little over 110, 112 amp hours usable. And we paid about $500 for that. and an equivalent battery in lithium, which will be probably like 100 amp hour lithium cell. Those things are still going for about $1,000 right now. So, there's obviously other advantages to that. Like they can charge faster, you can draw, more amps out of them at the same time. But our goal for the electrical system is to really keep it simple and not use AC power for the most part, and only use the inverter. We do have an inverter. Only use the inverter for absolutely necessary stuff. Like, we have a small like blender, that plugs in, like a 350 watt blender. So we use that every now and then. We have hair clippers, for when I want to give myself a haircut.
Haircut day.
And just small things like that. Our computers can charge over DC. I can charge my computer faster if I run the inverter. So every now and then, if I need to do that, I can do that. But for the most part, I want to use primarily DC. So really what we use it for are things like fans. We probably use the power almost entirely through USB chargers. It's computers charge over USB-C. All of our phones, all of our devices, all of our cameras nowadays charge over USB. So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have six lighter sockets that we can plug in. And we have just a bag full of USB lighter socket adapters. So we can charge with, all kinds. And along the electrical side, at the very beginning of our build, our van didn't come with roof tracks.
Mm-hmm. The railings.
Yeah, we didn't opt the Mercedes one, just because initially my thought was that if it's Mercedes, then it's going to be more expensive. So I ended up getting Vantech roof rails that go on the roof. They go into the factory holes, and they come with all the fasteners and all the sealing and all the caulking, all that stuff to seal it in. But I think the Vantech ones ended up being more expensive than the factory ones.
I think you might have said, I'm not giving another dime to Mercedes.
that might have been the real reason. I just, you write them a big old check and you just, you stick it to them by spending more money somewhere else.
They'll teach you.
It makes total rational sense to me. I don't know about you. But those Vantech ones are essentially the same as the factory Mercedes ones. I don't know what the Mercedes ones look like, but I like the ones we got, and they're cool because they're just little C channel, pretty heavy duty aluminum channels that you bolt in, and then you can put just little rail nuts in them and put what we have Yakima towers from, by the company Yakima that makes rooftop boxes and racks and ski, snowboard, bike racks and all that. We put bars across. We have 3 bars that go across. And then the solar panels, we bought these 175 watt rigid solar panels. We bought 2 of them. A lot of people have talked about using semi-flexible solar panels. I am, at least for now, completely against using those, just because we've had a couple of those and both of them have failed. And fortunately, I was able to get those refunded from the manufacturer when they were failing at a massive scale. And everybody who we've ever talked to that has ever owned semi-rigid panels have had them fail. So I don't trust them. But I also didn't want to just get 100-watt panels, which are kind of, they're all over the place. And mostly because 100-watt panels, they're not the perfect size for me to be able to maximize my roof space. Because we have 2 fantastic fans on the roof, and we're going to have surfboards and road shower and different things that we want to put on the roof, and we don't want anything to be covering the solar panels. These 175 watt panels turned out perfect because when we put them side by side, lengthwise, they are the exact same width as the Sprinter roof from rail to rail, from the Vantac rail to rail. So then I can just get little aluminum L bracket, drill a hole through it, and then bolt it right into to a rail nut. And that's how my solar panels are mounted. They're mounted directly to the rails. And then we just have a little weather seal box that we run the wire through. Well, that's another hole, I guess. So maybe we have 4 holes. Mm-hmm. Drill the hole through that and run the wires down. Yeah, and then so we have 350 watts of solar charging 225 amp hours of AGM battery. So essentially, we have 110 usable amp hours and 350 watts of solar. And that roughly gives me like a 3-to-1 watts to amps ratio, which is pretty good. We have a separate like 100-watt portable solar suitcase that we can also put in. So that'll give us 450 to 110 watts. So with that, we're getting like a 4 watts to 1 amp ratio, which is what I personally prefer, because even at 400 watts, 450 watts is what we have. On even a real sunny day in the summertime, you may get like the sun's out for, let's say, like, I don't know, in the summertime it comes out at 6, it sets at 8, right? So you get like 14 hours of sun, but maybe you'll get like a really good solid 5 hours of sun overhead. So in the other hours, you're kind of getting just partial sun. So you'll get like probably 6 or 7 hours of really solid light. So that's like, a quarter of the day. So that's why I think 4-to-1, 4 watts to 1 amp is a real good ratio. So that's what we go with. 4 watts to 1 amp when we have the portable panel deployed. 3 watts to 1 amp if we have just the ones on the roof, permanent. So far we've not had any problems. Only if we have really overcast, rainy days for prolonged periods of time, then, we'll have to find ways to plug. So we have other ways to charge, but we don't have the house battery connected to the alternator of the van. We've not done that. We might do that down the line. The reason why we haven't done that is because Mercedes, the salesperson from Mercedes specifically said to us that if you don't have an upfitter do your electrical wiring, meaning connect your electrical system to the van's electrical system, if it's not an authorized upfitter, it voids the warranty. So being that we bought it brand new, that came with a warranty, we didn't want to risk something happen and for them to say, hey, look, you connected these electrical systems together, so it voids your warranty. We didn't want them to say that. So we'll either have an upfitter do the job while it's under warranty, or wait for the warranty expires and then we'll connect it. But for now, the solar is doing perfectly fine by itself. And then we have a second way to charge, which is using a NOCO Genius Smart battery charger. We have a 7.2 amp hour battery charger that basically just, we connect it to the system and we plug it into an outlet and it'll charge it about 7 amps an hour.
And we opted not to drill a hole in the outside to have shore power like all our other rigs had.
Yeah. I mean, you can go all out with the shore power system, but ours is really simplicity. Like this little NOCO Genius battery charger is just a little portable unit. You can unplug it and you can use it on another vehicle if you want. And 7 amp hours is not a super fast charge, but for the most part, when we plug in this charger to charge, it'll just supplement our solar during the day as well. Even if it's raining overcast, we're still going to get some solar. So the 7 amp hours, that's equivalent to a 100-watt solar panel charging at full capacity. So really, I was saying before, you're only going to get about 6 hours of really good solar during the day. But having this little 7 amp charger plugged in 24 hours a day, that's equivalent to having 400 watts of solar, that only charge a quarter of the day. on a sunny day. So, we don't use heavy electrical. Like, I see a lot of van builds that are out there that are like 1,000 watts of solar, like 600 amp hours of lithium and 3,000 watt inverter. Like, they have induction cooktop, like residential refrigerator and electric water heater, all this fancy stuff that you would have in a house. We've lived in RVs for 10 years, and we're used to, conserving. We're used to having things work, that are built for RVs and vans and campers. So we're not trying to make our van work like a house. And a lot of people are, they're coming from their little apartment and they want to live in a van now, but they want to bring all their appliances with them. They want to bring their big, Blendtec blender, and bring their like 1,200 watt, 1,000 watt, like, appliances and plug it in. And that's totally fine. We just don't have the space for it, and we don't need it. We're used to not having that. So simplicity kind of wins out for us. Mm-hmm. And also keeps the cost down. So that's what we ended up with. And because of that, we also decided that we're going to go with propane for our cooktop. Mostly because we don't want to use electricity, because that's a really high added expense. And personally, I like cooking over a fire better. So propane is what we ended up going with. And in our kitchen cabinet, we built a propane locker that's totally sealed. And we also have a propane detector that's by the foot of our bed. Mm-hmm. So, and that's hardwired to the battery, so that's always on. So if there's any propane leaks, propane's heavier than air, it'll flow to the bottom of the van, and that's where it would be detected. So far, we've had propane in the van this whole time. The detector has not gone off a single time. And also, when you open the door, this van is not like our other campers where there's like a lip to the door. It could trap the propane in. When you open the door, whatever propane that might be there just kind of goes out.
And it's not airtight, the whole van. The van's not air.
It's not bad.
No, but I'm saying.
It's not drafty. Actually, you know what? I would argue the propane, the van's pretty airtight.
Compared to our others?
I mean, the four-wheel camper was really airtight, right? Because remember, if you have all the windows and doors closed, you couldn't drop the top because there's no way for the air to escape.
Right.
The van is similar, though, because if you have all the door closed, it's harder to shut that sliding door. Mm. That means it's airtight, or at least airtight enough. So, I feel pretty comfortable with how we got it set up in there. We also have, for heat, we might still get a diesel heater, either like a Webasto or an Espar heater that goes under the passenger seat. But right now we have an Olympian Wave 6 catalytic heater. And these catalytic heaters, they put out a ton of heat. They don't use a lot of propane. And the really nice thing about these is they use zero electricity. Mm-hmm. So we have the Wave 6, which is the next biggest, or the second to smallest one. The Wave 3 is really what we wanted. But for some reason, while we were doing this build, and all the way up until before we flew out here to Europe, it was sold out everywhere. So we ended up having to buy the next size up.
And I think it was really important for us to have a heater finally that didn't depend on electricity. Because whenever we camped in the Airstream or the Casita, and it was really cold at night, and our electricity was low because it was raining or snowing.
Yeah, generally, like cold temperature equates to less sun, right? Because it's in the winter, mm-hmm. and that means it could be rainy or overcast or snowing even. So it doesn't charge. So
having that stress of it's cold, it's 23 degrees, we have enough propane for this heater to heat us up, but do we have enough electricity? I don't know, and I hated that stress every night.
Yeah, exactly. So we like this catalytic heater option, but a couple downsides to this catalytic heater. One is that there's no thermostat. So it's kind of on or off. I think we've not really used this yet.
No, we've tested it out, but
right. But I don't know. I don't remember there's a high, low, and medium. There's like a heat setting, but there's no thermostat that either turns it on or turns it off because it has to be lit, right?
Right.
So there's actually you have to spark this little thing to get it to light. So it couldn't just turn itself off and turn itself back on. And since there's no electricity in there, it's either on or off. And it's like a mechanical valve that opens the flow of propane. So, that could be a downside because that probably means that when we really need to use it, it'll have to be just on, full blast for, a certain amount of time to get temperature up. And hopefully by then we can shut it off and then have the heat kind of retain. As long as our insulating job is good, we can,
It's great, Dan.
We can last till sun comes up. Yeah. So that's really efficient. Yeah, so that's what we did.
We didn't talk about the kitchen area or toilet or anything. How much time have we taken?
We have about 15 minutes left of this podcast, so we can go. We can go through the kitchen. We can go through plumbing. We can go through cooking and refrigerator and all that.
Okay.
So we work. So officially, we're ambassadors for Dometic, and if you're an RVer, you will know Dometic as a brand, as a company that makes a whole bunch of RV equipment. So we've had Dometic equipment in all of our campers. Our Airstream, our four-wheel camper, our Casita. We've always had Dometic stuff in there. So working with them was great because, they supply us with probably $2,500 worth of stuff for this build. And that was just a fraction of what we paid. In our build sheet, we ended up spending in total out of pocket almost $10,000. And then if you include the things that we either already owned or the things that we got from Dometic, and the other thing that we got for free as a sponsored item was a road shower.
Right.
So we reached out to Road Shower, and they're really great. They gave us their standard size road shower. If you don't know what road showers are, road shower is they custom made this aluminum water tank that goes on the roof of your car or wherever you want to mount it that's exposed to the sun. And it could handle up to 65 psi of pressure, and you can pressurize it with either a bike pump, a tire pump, or from a municipal city water that's pressurized. You can just kind of fill it through that hose, and it'll pressurize it. And once it's pressurized, it keeps the pressure in there, and then the sun heats it up. For every hour when the ambient temperature outside is over 70 degrees, they say that it will heat the temperature up by 10 degrees every hour. So that's pretty amazing. And it holds 8 gallons of water. So with our road shower, that's how we use pressurized water outside. And if we want hot water, assuming it's a sunny day, that's how we can get hot water.
And it's drinking safe also.
Yeah, it's
container, food grade. So in case you have an emergency, you need extra water, you can pull it out of your shower.
Right. So we carry, I think it's a 7 gallon, because all of our other jugs are 7 gallons as well. So I have 7 gallons up there, and then we carry 3 7-gallon. They're Reliance. They're these blue cubes. So rather than these kind of jerry can style jugs that we've had in the past, we got these blue sort of cube size 7-gallon jugs, and they work really well because they stand. They don't tip over like those jerry can styles would if they don't really stand on their own very well. But these blue ones, they're the perfect height for the under bed storage that we made. So we kind of knew we were going to use that and make sure that our bin fits under there, our jug fits under there. And then it's 3 of those that give us 21 gallons of water, fresh water. And then we have the road shower, which is another 7, so we have 28 gallons of fresh water. And then we carry another one of those Reliance jugs for our gray water. So we have a 7-gallon gray water tank. And I just kind of pulls out, and you can empty
and
it wherever you want.
that sits underneath our Dometic sink stove combo, glass top combo that we have. So that's our plumbing system, which we haven't gone over that whole kitchen area yet.
Yeah, so we have a SureFlow pump. I forget the exact model or PSI and all that, but it works really well. It plumbs right in. It's a bunch of Home Depot like PVC pipes and fittings and stuff to get it all connected, and then that goes up to the faucet. The pump is wired directly to the battery through a fuse. No, actually, it's not. It's not directly to the battery. It's through a switch. The pump is on a switch on our switch panel, so we can turn the pump on and off, and we have 2 of those jugs up front underneath the sink, and when it runs dry, that's 7 gallons. We switch to the other one, and then the third one we keep in the back. And then, we do that because our gray is only 7 gallons. So we make sure that when we run one dry, that we remember to empty the gray. Otherwise, we could risk overflowing, and we don't want that. And then for the toilet, when we switched to the 4-wheel camper, we got a Dometic 5-gallon portable toilet instead of having a full dedicated bathroom, which we were skeptical at first, but it turned out that it works really great.
Yeah, no problems at all.
Yeah, me and Luca would just go outside. Marlene, she tries. She got one of these like silicone Go Girl things.
It's a disaster. I keep peeing my pants. I'm like, I keep doing this. I don't have a washer and dryer to take care of my business.
If we're out in like boondocking in the middle of nowhere, like,
I could pee on the ground.
Pee on the ground. But it's for the kids. In the middle of the night, they have to go to the bathroom. We don't want them to go outside, even if they could.
We're trying to make this pleasurable experience.
Yeah.
Nobody's uncomfortable. Everybody has a nice sleeping area. Everybody can pee if they want to sit on a toilet. That's fine.
We want it to be fun.
Yeah.
So, we're totally comfortable with that. 5 gallons for 3 kids, 2 adults. I go number 1 outside. Whenever possible, that's what I do. So I don't fill up that 5-gallon tank for the most part. I sort of leave that space because, when it's full, I'm the one who has to go find a place to empty it.
We've
been getting
50-50 lately. It's your turn,
Yeah.
my turn, your turn.
It's not a pleasurable experience, but it's just something you have to do. But the nice thing about these portable toilets is that you can empty them anywhere. Anywhere where you have a residential toilet, like in a pinch, you can dig a big hole in a field, put it in the hole, and then cover it up with dirt.
Yeah, we don't use any chemicals in our toilet to help it smell or anything. We just kind of keep it clean.
They seal up really well. Yeah.
So
if you're okay with digging a hole when you're camping and then doing your business in there and then burying it afterwards, this is the same thing.
Yeah.
So that works really well for us. We keep it in a little compartment underneath the fridge box, which sounds crazy, but the fridge box is just the platform that our Dometic top-loading fridge goes on. Mm-hmm. And underneath, we just, when we had Yoda, we built a door for her, which is, how she goes in and out to use the litter box. And her litter box is in there, and our toilet was in there. So now just our toilet's in there. We use it for some toilet paper and stuff like that, storage-wise. Mm-hmm. So that's basically our bathroom and plumbing situation. And then for cooking, we have a 2-burner stove sink combo from Dometic, which is really great because it's a flush-fitting stove. Has a glass top that folds down. So when we're not using it, it becomes counter. Mm-hmm. So that works out really well, and that sits right on top of the propane tanks, or propane tank. We bought a 11-pound propane tank versus the standard, like the stuff that you get, that you exchange for like barbecue grills in the U.S. Those are 20-pound bottles. We had 20-pound bottles in the Casita, which came in really handy because when you have to get a propane tank refilled, like at a U-Haul or Tractor Supply or someplace, they're not always open. Somebody has to know how to fill propane tanks safely if you're not doing an exchange. the nice thing about having these standard size like we had in the casita was that you can just exchange them in a pinch. And they're everywhere. Gas stations, Walmarts, Home Depots. But that wasn't an option for us because 20-gallon tanks are way too big to put inside our propane locker. So we built our propane locker around this 11-pound propane tank, which fits in the space where we have it perfectly. And, we had some custom fittings and propane hoses fabricated by this propane company in Gardena, California. And we went in, we talked to this lady that works there. She had all this equipment. She's been there 40 years or something. Yeah, she just whipped up the exact thing that we needed in 20 minutes. So it showed us how to use it and everything. So that worked out really well. That wasn't something that we could have just found online. So if you're going to run propane stuff, have somebody who knows what they're doing do it for you.
It wasn't too expensive either.
No, it was maybe $50.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well. What else? We talked about electrical, talked about propane, cooking, plumbing.
We did an overhead over the cab for more storage.
Yeah. So because it's a high roof, you can stand in there. I think the standing height's maybe 6'6" or something. You can be pretty tall. And there was just a lot of space above the driver and passenger seat. So we decided to make a custom shelf to make use of that space.
That's really nice for everyday stuff like pajamas and jackets and, like a change of clothes. Because everything else goes in these closed cabinets or under our bed, and it's not very accessible. So having an area where we can kind of, everyday stuff, it made life in the van a lot easier.
Well, we have side cabinets that are, so there's different levels of accessibility for the storage. We have the easiest stuff to get to are things that are in the overhead shelf above the driver's seat and passenger seat. Mm-hmm. And not just these little bins or little, baskets that we stuff in. And then the second level are things that are in the kitchen cabinet.
Yeah, like our
you
bathroom
have to open the
stuff,
door, bathroom stuff, kitchen stuff's in there. And then we also have little cabinets like that by our bed.
The supports for the bunk.
Yeah, the side walls for the bunk. So there's 4 little cubbies. 2 of them are bigger. They have doors on them. And the other 2 towards the back, underneath the windows, they're smaller. They don't have doors on them. They're just little cubbies that we shove stuff in next to our bed, next to our head. So we can put our phones in there or whatever. And then the hardest stuff to get to is stuff under our bed. And those are things that we don't use every day. Mm-hmm. So they go in these big heavy duty bins, or they go in bags, and then they have their own place. So all the stuff that we have is in there now, and I think we've more or less figured out where things need to go. Mm-hmm. Things go in bins. We also have a Cobb Grill, which is another company that we work with. We wanted a way to be able to cook outside, and because we have this stove, this Dometic stove that we cook inside, we want to be able to grill up a piece of meat or something. And we don't want to bring a huge barbecue, and we don't want to use, external propane. We don't want to have those little 1-pound propane things. So we found out about this company called Cobb Grill, which is actually originally from Europe. They make this really cool compact grill that is they call it kitchen in a bag or something. Mm-hmm. So all that stuff goes in one bin. We have a video of us unboxing it, but we'll make more videos of us just using it to cook later on.
Hopefully next month.
Well, if it's really cold, we may not want to cook outside. But if we start making our way down the Greece, we can probably be on the beach and have decent enough weather. Yeah. So 4 bins below dedicated to stuff like that. Cobb Grill, swimming stuff, extra electronics.
Yeah. And we also, in this build, we wanted to tuck everything away. So nothing is out. When we lived in the 4-wheel camper, we had to shuffle things around, and it got really annoying. So our goal in this one was everything has a spot. Nothing's laying on our bed or on the floor. Everything's just out of sight.
Yeah, 4-wheel camper was duffel bags.
We had duffel bags for our clothes, and then all our outdoor chairs and stuff sat on the floor. They had to be in the hallway. So everything needed to be taken out before we can pop up. And it was set up. And I'm just tired of setting things up. I'm tired of making the kids' bed. What do I do with the bedding for our bed? And it just was... Yeah. It just got tedious.
And especially down in Mexico, we were driving, through a lot of places. And we didn't want to drive at night. So it seemed like when we're trying to get somewhere, we were in a hurry to try to get someplace before it got dark. And we got someplace, and then we had to shuffle. Yeah. So we're no longer living the shuffle life, which is nice.
Another thing we didn't talk about is we got swivels for our
and then driver. The little table that we made.
And then we made a little table, so then all 5 of us can kind of have a place to sit indoors if we wanted to. Yeah. And that was kind of the trade-off for having permanent beds, is we didn't want a way to turn a bed into a dining table anymore, like most people have, or like we did.
Yeah, we didn't want to convert.
No.
We're not living the shuffle life or the convert life.
Yeah.
We'll do the swivel chair life.
Yeah.
Which swivel bases in vans like this are pretty popular, but they're expensive. I think they were like $1,000 for 2.
Yeah.
We had both of the seats in the front swivel back, which is nice. You can have them turn around, and now you suddenly have, instead of just having this wasted cap space, you have like this living space up there. There's at least one big downside to the swivels, is that they add additional height to the seats. So fortunately, there's in our Sprinter, there's adjustment to be able to raise or lower your seat. So once we put the swivels in, we had just gotten the van, so we didn't know everything about it. I'm like, oh, wow, this is really high. I have to get used to this. But then I realized if you just pump the seat all the way down, then it was a comfortable height.
Yeah, but we're 5'10", and I think anybody shorter than us...
They may not reach the ground with their feet.
It'd just be uncomfortable,
I know
think, ergonomically.
I know that there are people who put like little step stools on the floor on the passenger seat. Like if it's a short person sitting on the passenger side, they put a little step stool down there so they can have a place to rest their foot.
Yeah.
So that's a downside, obviously. But when you swivel the seat around, you have to get it up high enough, because there are these side plastic pieces that would catch if you don't pump it up high. So then when you swivel that around, you can't lower it down as much as you can when you're facing forward. So then the downside is, okay, the front seat is so much higher than the seat that the kids sit in, the second row bench seat. So we made a table. We had a bunch of leftover scrap wood. Yeah. So of all the scrap pieces...
It's a rustic table.
It's probably the most rustic part of the table, or of our build.
It's like a patchwork quilt.
Yeah, but it's cool. Pieces. It's, my goal was to reuse the bigger pieces that are left, which I was able to do, and I also wanted to make it sturdy, right? So I reused enough pieces and had long enough pieces to kind of strengthen it, the whole length. So it was sturdy, and then we polyacryliced it like a couple of coats, so it's it's sealed, and we put like little electrical conduit legs on it, so that was made of steel, really strong, and we made little footing for them so they can kind of stand by themselves, so they can be used either outside as a standalone table. It's kind of not the best shape. It's narrow and long, but the nice thing is that you can put it right in front of the second row bench seat, so the kids can sit in their seats and have like a table to do school or to eat or to do whatever.
Right.
And then we can have our seats swivel, not all the way around, but maybe facing each other, and then have that as like a little counter on the side to put stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing about having the van, is to be able to utilize that cab space, or that cab, that driver passenger seating area for living space as well, which we weren't able to do with the truck.
I think that covers the inside. Let's go through the outside of the van really quick on the changes that we made.
Okay, so let's do the tires. We met a super cool guy named Mark when we were building the van out in San Pedro. He just, I think it was from Wander the West Forum. Mm-hmm. He first saw our listing for sale when we were trying to sell the truck camper and F-250. And we say, yeah, we're going to build a van. He's like, oh, I'm on my second build, 4x4 Sprinter vans. Like, and then he saw the picture we posted for the truck camper, and he's like, oh, I know exactly where that is. That's just around the corner from my house. Mm. So then we realized he's like a neighbor, basically.
Yeah.
So before we even bought our van, we got to go over there and check out his van. And he gave us some ideas, some things to do or not do. So during the whole build, our new friend Mark became like a super great resource. Mm-hmm. And he figured out, he found out that we were, travelers, and our plan was to bring to Europe. And he had wanted to do that. His family is from the UK. And he gave us a lot of, tips and tricks about like, yeah, you can actually get some things you can actually get here in Europe cheaper than you can get in the US as far as van builds go. So he ended up giving us a set of off-road tires from his van when he upgraded. And he had these Cooper tires that were maybe like a couple thousand miles on them.
Yeah.
So that was really great. So that was like, because we had just the stock tires, which are great truck tires if you're delivering Amazon packages.
Which we're not.
UPS. Our van is brown, so it's kind of like a UPS van. But we're not delivering packages. Like, we want to drive on sand, drive on soft dirt. We want to use our four-wheel drive now and then. But we were spending so much money during this build, we just couldn't quite pull the trigger to spend like $2,000 on tires.
Get rid of new tires for.
Yeah.
So
Mark came to us at the end of our build, just around when we were setting up, and he's like, "Hey Dan, I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse." And I said, "Okay, well, try me." And he's like, I just got new tires. I got those other tires left. And he's like, I'm like, how much? And he said, free. I'm like, you're right. I cannot refuse that.
Yeah, it was super nice.
So that was super awesome. So our friend Mark gave us practically brand new set of Cooper tires for free. And the other thing that we did to the outside underneath, like drivetrain wise, is since we added, I don't know how many pounds exactly we added to the van. Mm-hmm. Close to 2,000 pounds.
That's the one
maybe?
thing we didn't do that I really wanted to do is weigh the van, but we did.
Yeah, we can do it here, but it doesn't feel overweight, and it certainly doesn't look overweight. But once you put some weight in the back, I did start to see it sag a little. So I wanted to put either airbags or some kind of suspension thing in there. So I've had airbags in all of our vehicles in the past. Our first van, and then both of our F-250 trucks. And they work great, and they're adjustable, they're cool, but they just require maintenance. So, every time I think I went through 2 or 3 sets of airbags in the van, in our first van. And each truck, I don't know if I went, but at least a few times I've had to air those airbags back up in the truck. So I was looking for other options. And I came across Super Springs makes these polyurethane, like they're kind of like bump stops on steroids. So they replaced the factory bump stops, but they're made of like this polyurethane material, which are essentially like polyurethane springs. So the way that these work, they're always engaged, and the more you compress them, the stiffer they get. If they're just barely engaged, and they ride like factory height. So I put those in. I want to say they were like $400 or $500 for the set. They're fairly easy to install. I had a little bit of a learning curve to get over to see, okay, how does this exactly go in? I couldn't figure out at first. But once I figured it out, it was really easy to install by yourself. And that added the height right back to at least factory, maybe even a hair taller. I added an extra spacer, like a 1-inch spacer to the setup. So that brought the height back up even more. Even though when I talked to Super Springs about putting the spacer in, they're like, yeah, we have those spacers that we use for some applications, but our engineer says that we don't recommend it for you. I'm like, well, send them to me and I'll see how they go. If it's a bad idea, I'll send it back. So I installed them, and they work perfectly. So that's the other thing we added to the drivetrain. So we have tires, and then we have sumo springs is what they're called. Mm-hmm. They make a specific model for four-wheel drive sprinters that are different than the two-wheel drive sprinters. And they also make a front one, but we don't have anything in the front that's added. We just have sumo springs in the back. Yeah. The front is stock. And then the other, there was, I added, what is it called? The sway bar. So in the back of the van also, I added it's made by Big Wig. Is it called Big Wig?
I don't know.
Let's see, how much did they cost? It was a heavy-duty, sway bar for the back. Is it on this list? If it's not on this list, I need to add it to this list. Let's see. I have sumo springs on here.
Driving it for the first time with that upgrade and noticing a difference.
Yeah, I don't think it's on this list. I'm going to have to add it. Yeah, so what it does is it kind of ties your left suspension to your right suspension through this. There's a stock one. It comes with a sway bar from the factory.
It was very dinky.
It was very dinky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very tiny. It was maybe the size of my index finger. And this new one is I don't know, at least doubled the diameter. And it's heavy duty, and you can tell the difference. The biggest difference you feel is when you turn. Before, when you turn, it would feel like the whole car is leaning, away from the turn. And once I installed this, and then I have the sumo springs in the back, it almost brought back what it was like to drive when we just bought it with it empty. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a really good upgrade. So I'm glad we got that. I think that's pretty much everything down below. And then on the roof, we have, like we talked about, we have Yakima bars, 2 in the back, 1 in the front, and we have solar panels with custom brackets. We have
the wind deflector thing.
We have the wind fairing. We had a Yakima wind fairing that goes. That's why we have the 3rd Yakima bar all the way in the front. I don't know exactly how much benefit it has, but we already had the wind fairing for when we had the 4-wheel camper. I put the fairing in on the cab of the F-250 to help deflect the wind, so that the hope is that we get slightly better gas mileage.
I'd get over the 4-wheel camper instead of into it.
Right.
A little crack.
So when we sold it, I kept that fairing and decided I was going to install it back on the van, which I did. So that's why we have a 3rd Yakima bar in the front that's used just for that. And then obviously we have the road shower on the back. And then we have
2 surfboards up there. And we have we added the luminous ladder to the side. That was our a last minute purchase.
Yeah.
Just to make it this is going to sound silly, but when we had the 4-wheel camper and I needed to dry clothes or bathing suits or whatever, everyday life, I needed a place to be able to hang stuff. And I don't have anything on this Sprinter. It's too clean on the outside compared to,
It is. It's slick. And in the 4-wheel camper, the other thing I really liked is that there's these 4 corners that the jack stands for the camper goes on. And I use those jack stands to hang one side of a hammock and then put the other side on the tree or something.
Yeah.
We didn't have that for the van either, so I was always thinking, what can we do? And then I realized that this ladder wouldn't just allow us to get up to the roof to clean solar panels and untie surfboards really quickly. We can also use it to hang clothes, to dry. We can also use it to hang one side of our hammock. This thing is really sturdy.
Yeah.
It's really well made.
Yeah.
So I have no qualms about putting that much pressure as much as one side of a hammock. Even though, our kids can get a little crazy. They use it like a swing.
Yeah. They get yelled at a lot.
Yeah.
What else do we have? We added also, this was a big change that maybe a lot of people don't agree with, but we painted our emblems, Mercedes emblems, black. So we wouldn't be as...
Well, I think a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
Painting things black is a thing.
Well, one of the things we were kind of didn't want a Mercedes. We didn't want all this electronics and the symbol of Mercedes, so we kind of tried to hide it a little bit.
It was really shiny.
It was just too much bling for us. We didn't want it blinged out.
Right, so we just took a little plasti dip, and masked it out and sprayed it plasti dip black.
Yeah, and then we also went through what are we going to do for adding a logo or a name, and we went back and forth a lot, and we were just kind of burnt out with decisions. And at the end, we decided just to write mollymish.com on the sides, and
so we put our blog on both sides of the van, and then
that was a nice thing that our friend 395 North.
Yeah. His Instagram account, some of you guys may follow him on Instagram. He's big in the 4x4 community.
Mm-hmm.
He has a Jeep. Which Jeep does he have? A JK or a TJ? A JK, I think. And then I think he just recently bought an old Land Cruiser.
Mm-hmm.
So... yeah, he actually lived relatively close to where Marling's from. So, we met him a couple of times, and then, we reached out and say, hey, do you know? Because we knew that, he and his wife were both designers, that he knew people that can make these little vinyl decals. He's, we have a thing that we can we can laser cut really quick for you. So, he made a couple for us and then didn't charge us, which was really nice of him. So, if you guys aren't following Jan at 395 North, go ahead and search 395, the number, as in Highway 395, 395 North on Instagram. Search for him. He's got some really cool stuff that he's selling for charity. So, really nice enamel mugs, T-shirts, stickers, and things like that. So go check it out, buy some cool stuff from him, and, goes to a good cause.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of everything, but I think we can kind of summarize the price of everything. Like we ended up paying, we paid about $60,000 for the van,
mm-hmm. and
tax and licensing was like $66,000.
Right.
And then out of pocket, we paid, at least from this list, it's as close as we can get. Like, there's some little things here and there, I'm sure, that doesn't count. And also, like...
the sway bars.
The sway bar's not in here, but, the little things that go in there, like, do you count, like, a salt shaker? Technically, it goes inside, but, do you count, like, dish soap? Little things like that don't count. So, just to kind of the base build, we spent... almost $10,000 more, $9,889.69 is what I have. That's out of pocket, and then we have about $3,156.59 worth of stuff that was either sponsored or something that we already own and didn't have to buy.
Okay. So
to build sort of what we have. Completely, if you're going to pay for all of this using sort of current 2018 and December 2018 market prices, you're looking at $13,046.28. And then you add that to the $66,000 and change, you're looking at about a $80,000 out-of-pocket cost for building a 4x4 sprinter van like this.
Yourself.
To do it yourself.
100% yourself.
Yeah, so you got to put all the work in, all the labor in. But compare that to, at the minimum these days, even just like a basic build from like an upfitter, you still have to buy the van yourself. The cost of the van isn't going to change. An upfitter is going to charge you way more than that. So a high-end upfitter, obviously, they'll do a much better job building. They'll build you more high-end stuff, more comfortable, more like an RV. You're looking at as high as $250,000, which is insane. Mm-hmm. Even on the low end, just the bed and basic electrical system, some plugs for charging your phones and maybe a place for a cooler. Those things, even that is like $100,000 build these days. So if you have the time and you have just some basic skills, doesn't have to be really extensive because our skills are not that great.
You have account on YouTube where you can watch a bunch of videos.
Yeah. You gotta spend some time watching other people building it. Just if nothing else, gives you confidence to do it. I wouldn't have cut into the van without seeing other people do it to their van first. That was probably the biggest thing for me, is take an angle grinder and go to the wall. It's one thing when you buy a 10-year-old, UPS van, and then you cut a hole, but whole different thing when you just bought it last week brand new.
Off the lot.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty, we're going at, this is a really long episode. So for those of you that listen all the way through, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Fast forwarded.
And if you fast forwarded, which is fine too, I want to take this opportunity to thank a whole bunch of people that are patrons on Patreon. And I don't know if we should name them by name. People do that, but I always feel like,
maybe it's
do
hidden.
people want to be named?
Yeah.
Called out by name as patrons, but you guys know who you are. We really appreciate your support. There's not a ton of patrons on our Patreon, like 15 people maybe, but we really appreciate you continue to support us, and we're doing our best to put out more content for you. And if there's any specific requests, again, for what kind of episodes you want to hear from us, you guys know how to reach us, right?
I think so.
Yeah, comment in all the places.
Right.
So, well, that's it. That was episode 6. Next episode, I think we had a request from Twitter about homeschooling.
Yeah.
So episode 7 will be all about homeschooling and all the different types of homeschooling that we might do. So, if you guys are interested in that, hopefully we're on a roll now, 3 weeks in a row. So hopefully next week,
look at us.
We'll be doing episode 7. That's all about homeschooling.
Okay.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah. Bye.